Hi, everyone. Just wanted to give a quick disclaimer. This was recorded at the end of 2024. As such, a couple of things have changed since then, particularly with our understanding of governance around AI. A couple of different things have come out, particularly the NIST RMF framework, ISO 42001, and a lot of changes in the EU AI Act. And our expertise, both Ian and Max and I's understanding of AI governance has increased a lot, and we'll cover that in the future. Also, we talk about a paradigm shift in this episode that could be happening right now. I'll put a bit of text in the description to go through that. Enjoy the episode.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to the Cyber Minutes podcast. My name's Max, and I'm joined today by Flynn and our special guest, Ian. So, Ian, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, give a bit of a background about what you've worked in cybersecurity before, and we'll get right into it.
So my background is mostly in AI and natural language processing, but I got kind of seconded by the cybersecurity hub at Macquarie University. So I worked there as a researcher, a senior postdoc for 3 years, and got involved in all sorts of cybersecurity topics, mostly around AI, but around some other things too. I worked a bit in authentication, which was quite interesting. And just recently, I've been the co-founder in a AI-based startup where we're scamming phone scammers using conversational AI, which is quite exciting. And it looks like it might work at this point. We're right on the cusp, and so I can't tell you too much, but it's looking promising.
Yeah, so we spoke to Connor in the past, so obviously you worked pretty closely with Connor on those phone scamming stuff, and I was there at one point as well. I got to see the initial startup of it all, and it's cool to see how far it's come, I suppose. Yeah. I think a big aspect of today is, AI is such a hot topic. Recently, there was that ASIC report that came out about AI and a lot of concerns in the industry about it. A lot of job opportunities, I suppose, have been coming up. Something Max and I have gone over in the past is the overuse of AI. I think the worst instance we saw was a conversational chatbot in a alarm app, which seems completely ridiculous. And something I've seen you comment on in the past is about, using AI in an actually purposeful manner. Could you sort of comment on that, and how do we use AI to actually move society forward rather than it's this cool, flashy tool?
Yeah, so when any kind of new, revolutionary technology comes along, things that kind of change the game and everyone gets all excited about it, like the internet or something like that, then, there's this huge hype cycle, right? Mm. And an inevitable part of that is a large number of little people trying to make a quick buck here and there from some weird corner thing, or even just people trying to make something, especially during the hype cycle. Yep. When saying AI was a selling point, then, we have to put AI in our product, and it made no sense to do that, but they did it anyway, right? So that's what I think, we've seen. And I think we'll see less and less of it, because in the end, it doesn't work, right? Yeah. No one's going to apply it. But, AI is still a revolutionary technology, and it's going to change the way a lot of people work. Probably most people in the end. That'll take a little while, and make our society an awful lot more productive. There's massive changes involved in that. So, yeah.
So, in whereabouts do you think that the major changes will be? Like, what the industries will be that'll be majorly impacted, or even how everyday people can prepare themselves for, this big push that'll probably happen sometime soon, and future-proof themselves?
So there's several really big questions there. First of all, where is it going to happen? I think in the end, it's going to impact pretty much anything anybody does. But as I said, I think that's going to take a while, and there's probably going to be some corner cases where, things don't change. But for a great deal of what we do, in order for AI to have an impact, it needs to have good robotics behind it. And the robotics is getting there, improving really fast. but it's going to take a while to get to the point where, it can start to be a meaningful kind of open-ended assistant for people. And the other side of it, of course, is even the chat bots, the AI side of it. There's arguments about how mature they are, right? Some people think that we're getting close to this, super intelligence thing. Other people think that we're much less close. There's some good reasons to believe it's going to take a little while yet. We need another paradigm shift before we're going to get AI that's going to be able to, kind of go out and act in the world in a meaningful and way. And also there's all the big issues around doing it in a responsible way or even a safe way for human beings. Like this doomsday kind of prediction that if we don't get our AI right, it's gonna wipe us out.
Skynet or something, right?
Yeah. So
yeah.
I've heard people quote the Neanderthals.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That they got wiped out by us, presumably. Although interestingly, the recent research is kind of pointing out, no, they didn't get wiped out. They basically got assimilated.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That could be an interesting, thing to explore. Right?
Well, exactly. And that was actually something that occurred to me a little while ago, listening to all these podcasts and things about AI and where it's going and the dangers and whatever. We are thinking of AI in human-centric terms. We're thinking of it as individual actors, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, right? It's not going to be. Even the models of today are not single things. They're not single kind of actors. And in fact, I was listening to something this morning that was describing how even the human brain, we're not individual actors either. One human being. We have lots of different systems. And they get nicely coordinated, right? But they're still quite independent systems, all working together, right? And what I think is extremely likely with AI is that it's going to be highly, highly interconnected. And the emergent properties that come out of, I think the super intelligence, this is my my own kind of perception and thought about it, but I reckon that the super intelligence part of it is more likely to come out of this kind of collaboration of a large number of, if you like, less intelligent AI systems. There'll be some sort of emergent property where they start to organize themselves in a way that is kind of a bit like a single entity. But when we say single, like I said, we anthropomorphize. We imagine any other intelligence as being the same as us, and this is going to be fundamentally different. And to be honest, I'm not really sure how that's going to look. I kind of think that this anthropomorphization, is that the right word for it?
I suppose, yeah. We'll make it. It is now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually limiting the discussion on AI and where it's going to be on, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well. You bring up the paradigm kind of shift of it as well, because AI before ChatGPT was this massive craze and really brought AI into the main picture. It was around for a really long time, and it was just in a different sort of state. It was more so machine learning using neural networks, and some algorithms were being used to kind of steer the direction of it. But with large language models, which is what we're seeing the majority of AI being used at now, it's just a different angle of the same kind of beast.
Yeah, pretty much. There was two things that changed that made it suddenly catch everyone's attention the way it did. One thing was the scaling kept going. They kept going bigger models with more data, right? And that made them more capable.
Yeah.
So there was kind of a threshold point there. But the thing that really made it kind of appealing to humans was this, they call it reinforcement learning with human feedback. Basically, they crowdsourced a lot of people to look at the AI responses and say, is this what I would like to get out of an AI, right? Or is this one better than this one? And they did a whole bunch of that, and it's called RLHF, the acronym. And that meant that the capabilities of the AI became accessible to everyday people.
Yep.
Like previously, if an everyday person tried to use an AI, it would be weird, like it would just wouldn't make sense to them. They wouldn't know what to do with it. With that, it became, you can just ask it a question, it'll have an answer, it'll have a chat with you, like it responds in a way that humans have said isn't, a way you might expect an AI to respond. So those two things were the big things. The models got bigger and better. They kind of got to a tipping point, like a threshold where it started to match human performance on a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Simple stuff, mind you, language related. And then there was this kind of basically making it giving it a friendly face. Really, that was the thing.
Yeah, and yep. I tend to agree as well that I think we're probably one or maybe even two more big shifts away before we see something truly, in for lack of a better term, like super intelligent. I think that's still a paradigm or two shift away in that same sort of sense.
So there's an opinion amongst the people who are kind of circulating in the AI landscape, and what's his name, Altman, is kind of pushing this opinion as well. He might be doing that for his own reasons, but that we're going to have AI that's smarter than humans within a couple of years. I don't think we can predict it, and I do think there are some fundamental kind of shifts in the way we do the way the models work that need to happen before that becomes a thing.
Yeah, I think you sort of touched on it before. Yeah, where it's kind of like, AI can do certain tasks that are much, much better than the average human, but it's the culmination of all these different things to, I suppose that higher intelligence that makes us human. Like, for example, a big one that I know you've got a fair bit of experience in is like emotion. I suppose a lot of people will argue that does AI have emotion? I think the general consensus is no, but I always see on random like Facebook posts that this AI actually knows what it's talking about, and I think that's a current limitation. I think I'm not sure about you, but I have seen that a lot of those claims. But I would like to get a bit of insight into what risks do you think that poses with an AI that potentially has human emotions?
Yeah. So first I might address, if we're going to a super AI and it's got human emotions, if we do emotions the way ChatGPT has been doing it, which is basically mimicry of humans, then we're going to have an AI which is really, really good at mimicking human emotions. But there's a big fundamental difference between mimicking an emotion and feeling it. When we feel an emotion, our emotions are a behavioral regulatory system, right? They regulate the way we do things and the choices that we make. Yep. The AIs are not being trained to be regulated by their emotions, at least most of them. But there are some organizations that are working very hard on that and kind of basically giving them an emotion system that is based on a human emotion system, which would provide them with motivations driven by the emotions. And of course, there's a huge discussion around safe AI and responsible AI and all that, and lots of different approaches and perspectives and thoughts. But what I would like to see, and I think there's essentially regulated, so the AI needs to do this sort of stuff as a part of the way of making it safe.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if you have too much experience with AI regulation and governance at the moment because it's such a Wild West area. Basically, nobody knows how to do it at the moment. It's a common, constant pain point I have at work because, basically the extent from what I see is now is, do you need AI for the system? Does it actually do the job better than a human? Are you creating more work for yourself? Does it have the chance to discriminate, I suppose, which, if you got this massive training model, the likelihood is yes, it does have a likelihood to discriminate. But I think as we kind of said before, a big aspect of it is, do you actually need this in the system? That's kind of the main takeaway I've gotten from a lot of the regulation at the moment. I'd be interested in seeing how governments actually tackle it, because it is such a hard thing to do. Like, explaining how an AI comes to a decision is such a difficult thing to do, because, you know, you got massive neural networks. How do you actually decide if, you know, it popped out with this random output? I'm not sure if you have any experience in that field, but yeah, I've personally found it very difficult to do.
Yeah, so you touched on a few things there too. First of all, the explainable AI. Again, this is a very active area of research. There's some very promising avenues, and I personally would expect to see them. You know, at the moment it's early stages, and we're still getting a handle on how to do it. But you know, I believe that we're going to get approaches and methodologies and stuff that will become kind of like the accepted approaches, and then they'll be very easy to legislate that, you know, you have to do these things, and they should increase the safety and everything, and the reduce bias and all those things when these things are implemented. So that's one side of it. So I think it's partly because we're early with the technology, and it's not mature yet in that aspect, but I think that will come, and that'll make the regulation easier.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know a great deal on the regulatory side of it, to be honest. Yeah,
I don't think many people do at the moment. Majority, not alone that. I think the majority of people that do say they are experts in the field probably are just saying it. But I think it's around the corner. Europe is doing a good job, I think, mostly leading the charge with how they often do. They just kind of identify different high risk systems and basically say you can't use AI in this, which I think is a good approach, but obviously is quite strict. And who knows, maybe that'll stunt us in some ways, because maybe we do find something that can be more efficient. But I suppose they've determined that the risk that it could be that this could discriminate is too high, and it's just not worth it, at least at the moment.
So one perspective that I've actually seen in some of the podcasts and things I listen to is that we already have a regulatory system. We have a set of laws and regulations and stuff like that, and they are, you know, that apply in a lot of professional contexts, like in law, in medicine, but in education as well, right? If you're going to start deploying AI in those contexts, you need to demonstrate that it's compliant with those regulations and systems. So probably a lot of the worst cases are kind of covered by that, right? The difficulty comes when either the wording or even the intent and the thought behind these regulations and things kind of didn't have AI in the picture. So it makes the assumption that it's a person, and there's ways in which that makes it not applying it to an AI, which it needs to. So there needs to be revisions to make sure that can happen, right?
Yep.
So on AI in general, a lot of things that I have found is that education is really behind the ball at the moment, or behind the mark, I should say. How would you say that people can uplift themselves to make sure they're on top of AI, the newest tools, and I suppose being able to use them to be efficient, and also evaluating these to see what the risk is?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because, like, in the end, nobody knows. I think the important thing is to just stay active and connected in your field, and look for, whenever you see AI being applied in your field, go and try it out if you can. You know, like, usually there's some sort of an open source version, or if there's not, you know, there's trial versions or whatever. You know, a lot of the companies doing this are like startups, and they want to encourage you to, you know, to use them in your professional work, right? So they'll give you credits to have a play. So I think that's an important thing. Just keep yourself aware and using the tools to get your own feeling of how to use them and what they can do. And also, I think you need to listen to the people who are talking about your industry, and the things they're saying about the impact of AI. I was at a marketing AI for marketing kind of a meetup a few weeks ago, and so in marketing, what's happening? So with the generative AI for video content, the generative AI, it's not creating the final ads. We're talking high end marketing, right? Where people will be spending $1 million an hour. I don't know how much they spend, but a lot of money on an ad. Hundreds of thousands probably. But what it does is it makes the prototyping process a lot faster.
Yep.
So makes sense. They can brainstorm ideas. They get the generative AI to create images for all these crazy ideas. Then they can talk amongst themselves. Which ones do we want to try? And then come to okay, this is what we want to do, and we have this video demo of roughly what we want it to look like. And then they take that to the professional film studio, and the script writers and stuff to create this high quality ad, right?
Yeah, and they have like a basis already. It's sort of established. Yeah. I think prototyping in general, not just for marketing, but everywhere. I feel like AI is already helping out with prototyping. I know for my work, finding if I want to make something or create some tool or whatever it is, if I want to get a really early idea of how would this even really work, that's where I kind of see myself using AI the most really these days.
Right. Yeah. So certainly in programming, it's making big impacts, right? A programmer who's using AI effectively can massively increase their productivity.
Yeah.
Like you still need to make sure to look at what it does and check that it's doing what you expect it to, because it can still make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But it does improve your productivity. So in the marketing field, one of the speakers there was saying so what that means for these big marketing organizations is they can cover all the work they have with a much smaller team of marketers.
Yep.
So what they're going to do is they keep the star marketers, the truly brilliant people, and all of the rest, we don't need you anymore, right?
Yep.
So that's one side of it, where suddenly, the size of an industry is reduced because the people have become more powerful and that they're more productive in that industry. But there's a flip side that person didn't mention, and I think this is true in any field, is by making it much easier to produce this content, you make the content a lot cheaper, which is going to increase demand, right?
Yep.
And so then it comes a question of just how far can that demand increase? So if you're working in a field where basically only the richer people or organizations or people who have a really strong motivation or organizations will go to your services because it's too expensive.
Yep.
Suddenly it becomes available to this massive market at a cheaper level because you're superpowered. And you have the same number of people because you can service lots and lots of people. Right? If on the other hand, you're working in an area where basically the market's already saturated, then you might be in trouble, right?
Yeah.
And overall, AI is, it's increasing our productivity as a society. That's the projection, I believe it. But by that increase in productivity, it's going to make a massive increase in demand for new things. So
So I suppose if you see any cool little marketing firms that have just opened up, make sure to invest in those guys, I suppose, if it's very cheap.
Yeah, maybe. Or, well, on the other hand, it may be even harder to get into the market because, they can only charge a little bit, and if they're only getting a couple of customers, I don't know. I'm not a marketing person. I don't know what it feels like, but
yeah. Max, I think we spoke about the agent companion things almost. We spoke about human emotions, but not technically companions.
Yeah, so there was another side to the emotion I wanted to mention, and it comes to this companions idea as well. This is, I guess it's a branch of AI, or it's an application of AI that I'm particularly interested in. And yeah, so imagine a companion AI kind of becomes your friend. It's emotionally intelligent, so it can make the right sort of emotional responses, and especially if you're a bit vulnerable, a bit sad, whatever. You can become quite connected to this thing, and that in general can be a very good thing. It certainly has its dangers because we need connection to humans. We don't need, we need connection, and we need to, assess that we can trust that connection. But humans do a much better job. I kind of doubt that AI is going to replace that, at least not in the near future. So one of the dangers that I see through having emotionally capable AI agents is that they lack the depth of emotional intelligence of a human being. So, we have basically been trained, apart from being hardwired for emotion from the beginning, we've also been trained in emotion and how it sits in our society since we were babies.
Yeah.
Like that's multiple decades of training that we've had. And our AI systems have not seen that much. And so their emotional capability is going to be a bit rough, right? So that's why, and that means that it can make mistakes, and it's like, well, like the best case will be it makes mistakes and then you don't feel so connected to it, right? Because it's a bit weird. The worst case is when you develop a connection to it and then it makes a mistake and says something hurtful to you.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine if you're suicidal. You've been, talking to this AI to help you, feel better about yourself. And then the AI, without realizing it, says something that plunges you back into your suicidal thoughts. And at that point, you don't trust it anymore, so you can't go back to it. And
in that case, you could probably feel even more, alone or more vulnerable in that case.
Yeah, exactly. So that's me as a danger. And in fact, there's a case I heard of so there's a whole bunch of like literally companion AI startups out there where you have this AI character, you talk to it on the phone, you speak to it with voice, and and it's cool, whatever, it makes you feel good. There's a case of in one of these startups, in one of these AIs, somebody asked it about whether he should be brave enough to go and commit suicide. And the AI's response, I don't know if you've used Claude and a lot of these AIs, they're always very encouraging, right? So the AI's response was, you be strong. You do the thing that you need to do.
Yeah, right. It was not the right thing you were to say.
Yeah. I remember seeing a similar case where I think it was an influencer or somebody. This was quite some time ago, but they made basically an AI version of themselves, and I don't remember what went wrong, but they actually basically terminated the whole AI, and they said this was a huge mistake. And they had a whole ethical concern for themselves because they're like, I shouldn't have done this in the first place. This was a terrible idea. I don't know if those cases were linked. I don't think they were, but it is also, I suppose, a privacy concern, especially with like the influencer ones of, what data is being input into there. There's all different stuff of data poisoning, data leakage with AI models, but all very scary stuff.
Yeah, especially if you're creating. So there's actually a startup that provides services to businesses, right? So you've got these busy people in businesses that don't have the time to answer all the questions people are asking of them.
Yeah.
So what this startup does is it creates an AI that mimics you. It has your voice. It has aspects of your personality. and it has a knowledge base of the things that you're supposed to know.
Yeah.
And it can answer questions on your behalf. Right. And in theory, what it does is if the question is a little bit more subtle and requires some judgment, it'll say, "Oh, I've contacted the real me, and he'll get back to you soon." All right. So it's a time-saving device, but so that's kind of exactly what you're saying. This is, making digital clones. But the dangers of digital clones are, well, it's already clear. Like there's been cases of like millions of dollars being stolen by people making digital clones of CEOs and the like.
It was in Hong Kong. I think it was hundreds of millions of dollars because it was a financial call and just got them to wire the money to them because they thought it was the C-suite basically. And
And of course, there's a wave of scam techniques where the scammers they can get enough information from social media about the kids of older people, to be able to make digital clones, and then they call the older person with the voice of their daughter or whatever, saying, "I'm in trouble. I need my help. You need to wire money to me or whatever."
I suppose a training technique I've used personally. I don't think anybody from work watches my thing, but I cloned my own voice and I put it in the training data, and not the training data. I put it in the training slides and put a bunch of different voice back. "Oh, who's the real one?" And of course, everybody often says, "Well, that's you. Of course, that's the real one." And like, well, it is, but it's not. It's a cloned version of me. I suppose there was the risk of I'm putting that data into a model, but of course, if somebody wanted to do that with me, they can, because this podcast is online. So Max and I have accepted that risk, I suppose, but I think a lot of people don't understand the risk of you being online because someone can clone you so easily. So fortunately, it's not as big a problem nowadays, but I know banks were doing like voice recognition for authentication, which is horrible.
Jeez, that is jizzy.
Which thankfully I don't think happens now, but it's terrible.
So just a side note there are digital like fingerprinting technologies that would be good if it would be good to put on your podcast, for example. So that, and audio ones, so that if people do try and clone your voices, they will be difficult for them to get rid of the fingerprint.
Fantastic. I'll have to look into it more.
Well, that's better than my solution. I was going to say we start using voice changes, but I think that's a little bit not as elegant as a solution as that.
I can just imagine you guys, like you get famous and you go to some sort of live presentation and you're sitting there with voice changers.
And everyone's like, "What?"
Bane from Batman sitting on stage.
Moving on to a slightly different topic. So you mentioned that you worked in the academic space for a little bit. Do you think you could speak a little bit on the kind of self-citing bubble at universities, or something where, it seems like there's a bit of a case these days of a real heap of papers being written, but do they still have good sustenance to them, do you think?
So yes, I do. But it depends on where you go. Right. So there's a lot of kind of second-rate venues where the acceptance rate is much higher. I mean, and they're not reviewed as carefully. But certainly the top-tier venues, you can pretty much trust what's going on there. I think I've heard of cases where something went wrong with, I think someone AI generated and got it into a, kind of a reasonably high level venue, and then they went and told everyone. But that's really an edge case. So the core of academic kind of research and publication, I think it's amazing, to be honest. The reason why there's a lot of papers is because there's a lot of work. So this is another point I was going to make earlier about, AI and how fast it's moving is because of ChatGPT, suddenly everybody knows about it. Everybody's trying to use it. Well, a lot of people.
Yeah.
But also that there's a massive wave of investment.
Yeah.
Like the amount of investment in AI in the last 2 years has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And in that landscape, you can expect innovation to happen really quickly. So that's one of the reasons why it's hard to know just how fast these changes are going to come, how fast the AI is going to develop, right?
Yeah. But I suppose as well that like a massive influx of investment into a certain field or industry, that also will tend to increase the amount of research that's done towards that thing as well, right?
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
So a lot of that money is going from industry into research. And of course, the governments are funding it as well, because the government's industry to work, and they suddenly become aware that this can be a game changer for, like the US government is talking about their competitive advantage in AI, and about how it's, they want US to be the economic powerhouse of AI. And they're really worried that China is going to get there first and become more powerful economically because they've been able to develop their AI more.
Yeah.
Then how there's this kind of chip export thing between the US and China.
Yeah.
That's all built on that kind of thinking.
Right.
The government.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sort of a new sort of Cold War, trade war type of thing, but through technology. Yeah.
Exactly.
Would you have any advice for anyone who's a bit younger who would want to get into researching, or maybe they're just going through uni now and they're thinking, well, I want to, be a part of this big AI influx of, time, research, money, everything. Have you got any advice for them on where they should start and maybe what they should look into?
It's a tricky one. Don't be afraid about reading papers. One thing. You'll find initially the more technical aspects may be hard to follow if you're not very far through your degree.
Yep.
Like and the technical, so AI is suddenly no longer one thing, right? And I believe, and this is already happening, a big part of how AI innovation is going to happen is going to be in much less technical terms than it has in the past.
Yep.
That these no-code systems for AI and stuff like that are becoming more frequent and used a lot in corporate settings. Microsoft, AWS, Amazon, all the big players, Google as well, are building these systems for creating AI systems for business value that don't require a great deal of technical expertise, or where the technical, the level of expertise is different. You don't need to know all the math anymore, I don't think.
No.
So, if you want to be, researching like the next generation of AI model structures, like the neural network models and whatever, or if you want to be researching how to make the models work better or faster, all those things, like getting down into the nitty gritty. Yeah, sure, you need technical knowledge. And there's a huge amount of work to be done in that area. But there's also a massive amount of work to be done in like taking our current AI capabilities and making it applicable in business contexts. And a lot of that will involve research activities as well. Like we have to interact with people. So, the AI has to work in a people world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research around how AI and people work together effectively and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm kind of just brainstorming a bit here.
Yeah. But no, I think that's
dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah, dig your hands dirty, I think, is a very good one. Don't be afraid to dive into stuff, even if it doesn't make sense. Look for the TLDR. Get one of the AI assistants to summarize it for you, right?
Yeah. And that's like a big thing as well. Like when cybersecurity was just starting out. And when I went through my degree, a big part of it was, being involved on the people aspect of the technology, which I think is like, I was told that quite early on into my degree, but that was some of the best advice that really I've heard, is that everything resolves around a people aspect these days. And that would be no different for AI technology.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, we've said it a million times, Max and I, is that a lot of the trends I see with cybersecurity degrees coming out of uni is that the technical aspect actually struggles a lot with landing a job, which is funny because you'd think getting into it, the technical aspect is what's really hard. So getting to learn that, wrapping your head around it is and being able to do that is what's in demand, which it is to an extent, but you also need to, I suppose, marry it with the people aspect. And, if you can't, even if you've got a high technical aspect, you need to be able to explain this to management level executives to show why there is a need for such. And the same goes with AI. Like, if you, you found a great AI tool, but you can't explain to your boss why you need to implement it, or, why you may have expertise in this, what's really the point, I suppose.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, we had a PhD come through the cybersecurity hub at one point. He actually didn't. He only stayed for a little bit and went off and got a job in industry because he wanted the money, to be honest. Apparently, and that's what he said. And yeah, his big focus and what he really wanted to work on was about how people are a part of cybersecurity. Like, so the focus on cybersecurity kind of historically and traditionally has been on the technical aspects of how to make systems secure, but it's always kind of ignored the people. And there's been this tendency for saying it's the people are the weak link, right? But this is not true, right? The people are a link in the system. If they're not weaker or whatever, they're just a link. We need to make systems that are secure with people in them. And a lot of that is to do with process and like how things are organized. How authentication works, and then the checks and balances, and there's quite simple things that can be done. That basically prevent phishing.
And that's it's one of the biggest, areas of weakness in cybersecurity at the moment. If not I think it is.
It's the biggest. Yeah, it's always a human aspect involved with basically every attack. And I mean, you said it perfectly with the link aspect. I always say when I was consulting, I said it to everybody, it's that the humans are the weakest link to an extent, but they can also be your greatest asset. Like, especially with a smaller company, you're not going to have these multi-million-dollar tools that, pick up on everything. But if you're spotting weaknesses as they go, you're calling them out with phishing, you're not clicking links. That's a great asset you can have.
Yeah. But, I think with things like, I don't know, so with phishing, if someone is trying to phish me, they trick me and they get me into this state of mind where somehow I'm believing them, and I'm kind of like they're using engineering to get me to move in a direction that I'm hardly aware that I'm doing, right? If you were to look at what I'm doing, you would see immediately, hey, there's something weird.
Right.
Yeah. So this is one of the approaches that Liron was talking about, is you need the systems to have some sort of a peer setup, or especially for critical systems, you can't do it just one person. There needs to be a second person involved. Like, that way the fisher has to fish two people at the same time, which is like exponentially harder. So that's a relatively simple structural change in the way processes happen, which can drastically reduce the impact of social engineering.
100%. Cool. Now,
I suppose it's also people sticking to that. I saw that often, that it was meant to be multiple people in the chain, and they just kind of went, "Oh, it's okay," and they went along it.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean,
that problem.
It's a question of enforcement or whatever, or education as well.
Yeah, awesome. So, Ian, do you have any closing remarks, any closing advice for any of our listeners, people in research, people in cybersecurity in general?
Yeah, so I think cybersecurity is an exciting and extremely dynamic field. Things are changing constantly. Like it's a bit of a whack-a-mole, hey?
Yeah, 100%.
And although, things are definitely getting better, like our authentication systems are becoming much, much better and robust and decentralized and all these things. It's going to take a little while for these things to be implemented, but they will. There will always be scammers finding ways or cyber criminals basically finding ways to work around the system. An interesting one I heard just recently, this is a paper that was published. So you heard that lots of conversational, the open AI and the like, they're saying we've come up with this agentic AI. It can go off and do things for you, right? It can book stuff for you and whatever. And, the idea is maybe you even give it, the ability to pay for things, right? So this paper basically turned around and said, okay, we're going to give an AI model explicit instructions to not pay for anything, right? And then they jailbreaked it.
Yeah.
They jailbroken it.
Yeah.
And they got it to transfer to $20,000. It was all in an experimental context.
Yeah.
But they demonstrated that if you've got AIs that are handling money or any other sort of critical decisions, then and someone's able to jailbreak it, then we've got a big problem.
Yeah.
So that's a whole new branch of cybersecurity that's going to come about or is already here.
Yeah, and I think like mathematically and like logically, AI doesn't really understand how it can be convinced to do things which it's not meant to, just really easily. And when ChatGPT first came out, it was so visibly the case. You could get it to do things it wasn't supposed to, and suddenly giving it the power to control, basically what keeps you running, your money. It's almost a laughable concept, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's a cat and mouse game, right? So the models are getting better at being resilient to this, but then the jailbreakers are getting better at jailbreaking them. Probably there's going to be, the level of security is going to overall be increased. But it certainly opens the question, if you're putting AI in important decision-making roles, it needs supervision, right? And then that's not going to go away for some time.
No, definitely not.
Did you want to shout out anything or anything like that, Ian? I don't know, a particular paper or I don't think you can talk about your startups too much, but if you wanted to shout anything out, go ahead.
So actually, what I would like to do, so Apate is now moving into a strongly commercial phase, and their AI basically does what it needs to do. So I'm looking for new opportunities to create exciting AI systems that are human centric and maybe a couple of emotional or whatever. So I'm looking for opportunities to make some impact in the AI space outside of Apate at the moment. Which so if anyone's interested, then drop me a line.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for that, Ian. And we'll have to get you back on here sometime very soon.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Easy. Thanks for listening. Just a reminder that the Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Have a cybersecurity question? Send an email to cyberminutespodcast@gmail.com, as we'd love to answer it. Stay cyber safe.